Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
As we gather this morning, I respectfully acknowledge that we are in a place with a history that exists long before our arrival. Well, some of our arrival. We are in a place to which Nueta, Hidatsa, Sanish, Dakota, Lakota, Métis, Titisa, and Anishinaabe peoples all have belonging, connection, and deep knowledge. Colonialism does not only live in the history books. I personally am working to understand how I contribute to and benefit from colonialism and systemic racism in my everyday life. Many of us are in this place right now as a result of deep injustices to the original peoples of this land. This acknowledgement is meaningless without effort, understanding, and committed action to doing better and being better. Our opening words come from Dana E. Worsnop and are titled, I Want to Be with People. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they're getting at. And I know that they aren't getting it quite right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. Well, not always. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved, to be eligible for salvation. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see in me goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and foibles, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to reserve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life, and who will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in the world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and kind, who strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises I make. I want to be with people who give of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and gifts. I want to be with people who know that human community is often warm and generous, sometimes challenging, and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people like you. We join Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalice, which is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you're on Zoom and you have a chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video and share while we light them. We are in good company. Our chalice lighting words come from Judith L. Quarles and are called A Community of Faith. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. And may this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth.
Wish I could say all the
Today's program is pre-recorded by Byron Tyler Coles. He says, in the wake of such great change, internally and externally, we must ask ourselves, what is the church to be and do in this time? Come, let us gather in community as we reflect on this question, and speak honestly of our journey and faithfully imagine a future to come. Tyler Coles is a reverend. He's a native of Roanoke, Virginia, and he believes that the best of our collective ministry strives towards conjuring the beloved kingdom on earth as it is in heaven.
Just the other day, I found myself strolling down memory lane, partially due to the never-ending spiral of chaos in our world and my desperate need for distraction. As memories and sensations came and went, my mind landed on the water's edge where I spent several summers with my father camping at Smith Mountain Lake in Central Virginia. There, at this campground, I would just roam about on my own, playing in the creeks that meandered their way into the lake, picking up large chunks of quartz crystal and adding them to my growing collection, and spying upon salamanders as they slithered about. The water's edge was a cherished place, a safe place. It allowed me to be curious, happy, and carefree. And there I would occasionally build sandcastles on the beach. And in all reality, it wasn't much of a beach, but it was a small cove that had been cleared of a few saplings and large rocks, which had a few barrels of sand put down to make it feel more like a beach. While my father was never much of one to buy me proper toys to build sandcastles with, I instead used what was available to me: damp sticks, jagged rocks, fallen leaves, and my own bare hands. While none of my creations looked like the proper and respectable sandcastles that most of us would be accustomed to, they worked for me. You could generously say that my earthen creations had character and some pizzazz about them. And my, how I was proud of what I had carefully planned for and created. Yet that pride did not always last, because building sandcastles on the edge of a lake denotes the presence of one thing: water. Each morning I would come to the makeshift shoreline only to find my gleaming creation from the day before practically washed away. And without a doubt, I would become frustrated, grief-stricken, and overall bewildered as to how my work could just cease to be. Each time I would build something new and strategize a different plan that included a bigger moat or a higher wall of sticks, all in the hopes that my sandcastles would be protected from the rising tides and ever-present waves. And each time, I would return only to be frustrated, grief-stricken, and bewildered yet again. In retrospect, I am left wondering, how could I have ever held back the waters alone? And where could I have gone for support and rebuilding? In some way, this is one of the ancient questions that we as humans have asked ourselves repeatedly. And as the Reverend Ali Bell posed in his meditation entitled Psalms 121, we lift our weary eyes from the Shelter in This Place meditation anthology. Where do we find help in these sorrowful times? We are seeking something to hold us, someone to hold us, for we feel so weary. Each of us, all of us, really, have sought the answers to these questions. And each of us, I would imagine, have identified one or two, maybe even three if we're lucky, places where we can find refuge and support during the most trying moments, such as the ones we now find ourselves in. Whether they be family or friends, work or music, gardening or just zoning out, the list goes on. And I would dare to imagine, no matter whether this is your longtime community or you're checking this place out for the first time, that church might fall somewhere on that list for you. Yet of all those places which we find solace, the church is different. It is different in that it is a space that we come to as our full selves, our messy selves, our yet to be selves. Spiritual community is different in that it gives us a place to gather whilst being guided by the wisdom of our predecessors, all while striving to fulfill the hopes of those who are yet to come. And this place, made holy by our presence together, and this place held together by our covenants, our highest aspirations with and for one another. Church is where we strive to live into the instructions of prophets from days gone by as to live in the ways of justice, connection, and groundedness. And yes, while the location, the physical brick and mortar location has something to do with this, the church is more than the concrete, the wood, the stained glass, and the carpet. It is about the people who gather and organize, who soothe and comfort, and the sublime cause for which we gather to explore, and how we are set free in doing so, together. Theologian James Luther Adams once stated, "I call the church free, which in covenant with that divine community-forming power brings the individual, even the unacceptable, into a caring, trusting fellowship that protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom. Its goal is the prophethood and the priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing." End quote. In this, we see how the church, our beloved and still complex spiritual community, exists differently in times such as these, and that it, through us, calls into being by words and deeds alike, a life-giving way of being with and for one another. It is the co-creation lab of humanity, if you will. A lab that is not dependent upon perfection or tasks to be completed or hours to be clocked in on or simply showing face when our hearts have been shattered. But it is instead about the life-giving imagination and the resulting actions in which we are each given into freedom through bold and beautiful actions of love and compassion. In this, we receive a clear instruction, I believe. An instruction that I find myself often needing to be reminded of, in so much that we, us, hold the steering wheel of our history. We make the choices, beloveds. And in this greater moment, I find myself wondering, and maybe you do too, will we move into what comes ahead feeling unlovable and cast wildly asunder, or will we go forth remembering power unto ourselves as to tend to our communities and caring deeply for one another? A community in which we find our help and in each other, in the faces of those who we share this physical and virtual chapel with. One in which we find embrace, though not always in the physical sense, but in the knowing and remembering that we have been, are being, and will be cared for and witnessed to throughout the course of our life. Yet the prophetic and healing work that we are all tasked with feels wildly, wildly daunting right now. We are in a moment of cosmic shifting, and as I have come to say, if we lived 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, we would be writing biblical stories about what we are experiencing and witnessing right now. For nothing is normal. Nothing is right. The tide continues to rise, and the waves seem to almost never cease. And I must admit that this week has felt like another one of those trying series of days full of trials and tribulations. Things are so hard, beloveds. And I have found Just naming for myself, and maybe for you too, that my anxiety and despair is eking out all over the place. We have turned to a whole manner of things instead of creating, ensuring relationships, and upholding our covenants with one another. It is easy for us to be guided by our broken hearts and open wounds, not towards care and tenderness, but towards isolation and despair. And though, while understandable, it doesn't change anything. It only makes it worse over time. But as we look for the guiding wisdom, a guiding word, I find the words and meditations of Adrienne Marie Brown as a reminder, and that she says, we can survive this without destroying everyone around us. Though however challenging our mission, to prophetically imagine a new way of being and healing may be, it is only possible through the telling of the hard and tender truths of our time. And it is only through the telling of our individual and collective truths that we can fulfill our mission as a covenanted spiritual community. This invites us at least and requires us at most to speak of our experiences in all the moments of our lives, to be brave in the sharing about our broken hearts and weary spirits, and our joys and excitements, because our emotions exist in the intricately woven tapestry of our fleshiness. And to be honest about where we have been and most likely need to go in the days ahead. There's a part of me, I must confess, that feels hesitant in exploring these delicate threads, as I can hear the nagging whisper in my head saying, go easy right now. We can't take too much. Yet in so many conversations with others, I detect a deep desire, a desperate yearning to be reminded that we are indeed headed somewhere, or at least needing to be reminded. That is our hope as a religious people, guided by audacious values and a prophetic mission, that we are indeed headed somewhere. A somewhere I would imagine that is akin to what my ancestors would have called the promised land, where milk and honey flow freely for all to receive. But such is only possible if we do the needed discernment work and the precious tending to our journeys right here, right now. In April of 2020, the Reverend Nadia Bowles-Weber shared in her remarks at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., that this is the time where we will have to clean out the church. Meaning, we are going to need to act while discerning what is and is not our work to do. We can't do it all. We will need to discern what is and is not our mission and greatest calling. We are going to have to discern what is and is not embodying our values. And what we discern God willing should not be infighting, or hiding our light, or fear-based guessing, choosing the same old, the quick disregard and passing interaction, or over-functioning because it is what we are used to. But we instead have this moment to make other choices. Faithful choices, imaginative and creative choices, healing and transformative choices to ground and connect with one another. This effort has been and will be hard because the sources of our pain are ongoing. Yet we must remember in all of this that the trauma of our time seeks to pull us to the shadowy places that say isolation, distraction, and chaos is all that is left. Yet the healing that we can champion and bring about for one another occurs through bringing ourselves into ourselves, bringing our communities into themselves through acts of transformation rooted in truth-telling, accountability, reorienting and moving forward differently. Healing is ultimately about coming into and remembering our whole selves, reaching out to one another in blessed care and reassuring one another in our collective journey. And it will require us to try out new modalities and to pivot in changing needs as to access the care of community, justice, and groundedness right now, though we would sometimes rather not. So I'd like to invite you into a few moments of prophetic mindfulness, if you will. If you're comfortable, close your eyes, place your hands somewhere comfortable, and envision what an audaciously supportive spiritual community feels like. What sensations come up? Are there tears? Honor them. Are there yearnings for connection? Honor them. Are there desires for stillness and slowing down? Honor them. Is there fear and hesitation that we might lose control and what currently has been will become unrecognizable? Honor them. Are there pangs to change the world? Honor them. When you're ready, I invite you back into this space. Open your eyes and take a few deep breaths. In closing, I'd like to share another memory of those childhood sandcastles I had mentioned earlier. One of those mornings when I had come to the water's edge and found my creation from the day before gone, I was greeted by other children around my age. I hadn't seen them before, but they noticed how I was peering down at a mound of sand and rocks and sticks and leaves, and they asked, "What are you doing?" I sheepishly shared that it was a sandcastle that I had built the day before. Maybe noticing the look upon my face, as I have never been one to hide a facial expression, they asked if I'd like to build another castle with them. So I said yes. At that moment, one of the children walked away for a few moments, only to reappear with a few sandcastle-shaped buckets and a shovel. Beloveds, we are indeed each other's keepers. Tending to our lives with and for one another has always felt challenging, because it is. But we can and we must do it together. It is our invitation. It is our mission. It is our mandate as a spiritual community who have covenanted with one another to do a whole host of things, and most of all, to love and care for one another mutually. When it is all too easy to turn inwards as to hide from our sorrow and to not let others see, as the Reverend Dennison once said, gentle people, come towards your community. You can come just how you are. We are all disappointed and sad and stressed out about so many things right now. Let us help each other through, end quote. Let us rejoice. Let us rejoice in the audacious possibilities of our love and care for one another. Let us be received in this, our holy connection to one another, and may we be transformed and fortified in the doing of such, all while truly coming to know that we are of one creation, bound up and set free through endless grace and mercy. Ashe, so be it, and amen.
So I will now extinguish our chalice with the words from Deborah Burrell titled Kindle New Sparks. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community, and the chalice flame, as the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond.
And the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better